Hi, Nick McQuaid here to welcome you to my dotfiles repo on GitHub. So this is the URL for it, github.com/micmcq/dotfiles. And I just wanted to explain it a little bit before you actually install it on your own machine, or I install it on my new machine. I mean, the whole purpose of this, the initial purpose of Chamois and dotfiles is to manage my dot files on multiple machines. So I may get a new machine or have a catastrophe happen to this machine, and then I want to replicate all my dot files at once. That's really what this is all about. Okay, so these are the contents of it, and what happens when you actually install this is that these things get changed. So this will install a directory called .config, but it'll literally be a dot followed by the word config, and so on. Okay, so these are my personal dot files managed with Chamois. You can read about Chamois further. And this repo assumes that I'm using Chamois, Mac OS, Kitty, Bash, Brew, NeoVim, R, and a large assortment of mostly terminal-based utilities. I should mention that I advise you to use Chamois. I'm somewhat indifferent to whether you use Mac OS or Linux. Kitty, I think, is extremely valuable in 2026 because people are using large language models a lot, and you can use Kitty. Kitty is a terminal emulator, but you can use it to manage your conversations with, in my case, Claude. I do a lot with Claude and Claude Code, and in the terminal, I have a lot of terminal tabs open that are well organized by Kitty. Anyway, I use Bash. The default now on Mac OS is ZSH, but I stuck with Bash when they changed that, so I'm assuming that you'll use Bash also. And I use Homebrew, or Brew as it's also called, to manage all the packages. So I just update all my packages once a week. And that's particularly important now because security has become such a huge problem in 2026. You really want to stay up to date on the packages that you use. Then NeoVim is my text editor, and this is just a version of Vim. People aren't going to like it when I say that, which is itself just a version of VI. And there are other people who won't like it when I say that, but that's what it is. And then the programming language R, and then all these utilities. Okay, and some of the utilities you're not going to care about because they help me teach, and some of the utilities help me with music. So if you don't care about those things, I would suggest that you install everything and then just subtract the things that you don't want rather than to rebuild this piecemeal. I just had a student install it on their machine piecemeal, and it turned out to be quite a chore, and I think it would have been easier to just follow the directions in this file and then subtract things in the brew file. And I advise you to create your own .secrets file. So several of the steps here relate to secrets and keys, and you would have to do that on your own. These will just replicate mine, which are of no use to you because they're encrypted. Okay, and this video that I'm making right now will eventually be linked right here. Okay, so what's in this repo? This table, this is a large table. You can see there are a lot of things here. The main thing that you need to look at is this center column. So these are files that may exist on your machine already. So what I want you to do is check to see if you have these files already and then back them up before you start messing with my repo. So if you have any of these files here, you want to back them up. Probably you won't have any of these files, but it is always possible. And some of these files are encrypted. So AGE is an encryption mechanism, and you can see here that .secrets is encrypted. AGE here, personal.lua is encrypted. I think there are some other things that are encrypted here. Oh yeah, here we go. GCal CLIRC. This is a file for if I want to run Google Calendar on the command line. So my Google Calendar dates and stuff show up on the command line. That has my Google credentials. So obviously I don't want to share that. Todoist, I don't want to share my to-do list, which is used in Todoist. So that's encrypted too. And then most of these other configs are for tools that you may or may not use. So you may eventually delete some of these things. Some of the things are, I think, really important to have. For example, the Kitty terminal config. I think you definitely want to use that. I think you want your own secrets file. And a lot of people find this, you may find this a bit like angry fruit salad at first, having a bunch of colors show up in the terminal. But what happens over time is you get used to the different file names when you type ls. Here, let me just open a terminal here. Where's my terminal? I'm gonna do what you can do. So that's Kitty. I don't want to open Kitty. Let's do this. Let's do it this way. I'll open terminal because you already have terminal. It's built-in. And let's say I'll look at downloads, and you can see that there are quite a number of colors. The file types are color coded. You can see the most I have are PDF files in here, PDF files that I've downloaded that I haven't dealt with yet, basically. This is a catch-all for things I haven't dealt with. Okay, so back to my dotfiles repo. So there are a bunch of relevant things there I'll talk about in a few minutes. So, and then there are some things that are not managed here. And I have a Chemois ignore file that avoids, committing and ignores some of these files that I use that I don't want to share. Okay, so .secrets. This section you can pretty much skip unless you're going to work with secrets. The first time you do this, I would suggest you skip it, and then later come back to it and do a secrets file. So I assume that bash is your shell. If you use this on a new Mac OS machine, you may find that ZSH is your shell. So I installed bash below in a later step, and I'll show you how I did that in a minute. And the changes to your configuration won't take effect until after that step, so don't expect miracles. Okay, now there are 3 commands that you run that are prerequisite commands. And the first command, this is a very long command. This I copied from brew.sh from this URL, and it's just this command here. But you may actually want to go here and pick it up from there instead of running this, because they may change over time. They haven't changed in years, but it's always possible they would. So I would check that. And then you'll need to use brew, so you install brew and then you use it to install the Chemois package, the AGE package, and the GH, that stands for GitHub package. And then you actually are going to then use the GitHub package. And then you can skip this step if you're not doing the key. This is going to install my key from my iCloud, so it's not going to work for you unless you create a key file, which you can do, but maybe you don't want to do initially. Okay, now here's the really important step. This actually is going to this is going to clone the repo. So it's going to act like git clone github.com/mcmcq/dotfiles.git. But it's going to do more than that. It's going to also, it'll decrypt secrets and personal Lua using key.txt if I do it, and does nothing for you if you do it. And then it will also clone this separate repo called kickstart.nvim into .config/nvim. And it also lays down this file. And this file is a list of packages. So before you move on to step 3, you may want to examine this list of packages and delete unwanted packages. Let's take a look at it in the terminal. Is this the terminal? Yeah. So I'm going to switch to .homebrew, and then I'm going to say cat brew file. And if you do this, you won't get the color coding that I'm getting until you've installed packages. It'll look really dorky until you install some packages. So what happens here is that there's a comment before each package that says something about what the package is. So this very first one is a music package that you probably don't need unless you're interested in the ABC music notation and MIDI files. AGE you definitely want, but you'll have already installed it. ARF is used with the programming language R. Brew A style installs a code beautifier, so you only want this if you're a programmer or if you teach programming and you have like students submitting files in all different coding styles. You can unify them with this, and so on. So there are 130 some odd packages in here, and you can just go down the list and look at the comments to see if you want them, and if you don't want them, you can either comment them out or delete them. Okay, so that was all I wanted to show there. So then you're going to say brew bundle -- global, and this installs all these packages, this 130 packages. So this is a very lengthy step. And the most important package is bash. And after you install bash, so this is after you install it, you need to say chsh, that's change shell -s, and this is the new shell that you want to use. This is the shell that you've installed in this step, and you want it to be the default shell from now on. Now, sometimes I've had to manually add this line to the etc shells file. Did I show you that? I don't think I showed you that. Let me just show you that. So I'm going to say cd/etc, and then I'm going to say nano shells. And that lets me edit this file, and you can see that I've already got opt-homebrew bin bash in here. On one occasion, I found it was installed automatically. On another occasion, I had to install it myself. So your mileage may vary. Oh, and then you should check, you should say bash version. And in my case, it says the correct version, 5.3.15. You can also say which bash, and it gives the correct path. If I say bin bash, the one that is in here by default, from installed by Apple, it's 3.2 something. And if I say echo, that's already set up, I get opt-homebrew bin bash is the correct shell. Okay, so I also added a package that's not in the brew file called blesh, usually pronounced blesh, but you can pronounce it however you want, I don't care. and you have to actually go to this URL and install it using the instructions at this URL. And this is a useful package in my mind. It allows notice that all the commands here were color coded. The color coding may not mean much to you at first, but over time you'll get used to it, and it will be easier to spot errors because of the color coding. And it does other things too. Blesh provides a Vim compatible text editor for your bash commands. You can also well, never mind. Okay, there's more stuff. There's always more stuff you can do. And then Yazi. Okay, so let's look at Yazi. So Yazi is a file manager like Finder for the terminal. And one thing that you may notice is that some of the files and directories here have icons that aren't just folders or square file things. It's worth let's look at this for a second. Yeah, see all these different icons? Music is headphones, movies is a camera and stuff. This is because my terminal has, after I've set stuff up, if I go into settings, I've switched to Victor Mono Nerd font. The brew file will actually install this font for you, but it won't change the terminal to use it. But you can make the terminal use it if you want. Okay, so Yazi has a lot of plugins that do things like introduce these icons, and you have to do this separately in the terminal to make that happen. And then you verify this. This isn't necessary for you unless you're using secrets, and you definitely want to make sure that the NVim configuration got in there if you're going to use NeoVim. And it will say these double ampersands say if successful, then do. So you're saying Chemois verify. If successful, then do echo state matches. So if Chemois verify returns an error, it will not show echo state matches. And the same thing is true here. If this fails, you won't get this files in place. If this fails, you won't get this files in place. Okay, and then this is my daily workflow, is that I may change one of my dot files with the command like this, and then I apply that change. And I have found that this third command doesn't necessarily work. I actually always do it this way. I type Chemois CD and press enter. Then I type git add-a enter, git commit m and a commit message saying what I did, and press enter, and then git push. Now, and that works for me all the time. For some reason, if I do it as a chain like this, it doesn't always work. And then exit. Now, it's not going to work for you on this step right here, because you're going to try to push to my repository, and that's going to fail. You don't want to push to my repository. Well, maybe you do, but I don't necessarily have to accept it when you try to do that. I can reject whatever you push to my repository. So you may want to, as part of your daily workflow, you may want to fork this repository and make it your own, and then make changes. And then you can also get my upstream changes when you fork it. But that's a story for another day. Here's how to edit an encrypted file. When you edit the NeoVim config, you do it outside of Chemois, not via Chemois. If you do this, Chemois edit, and then init Lua, that's where my main configuration for NeoVim is, you will get a message saying that it's not managed. Okay, and then backing up the key, is not necessary at first. I would just explore at first, and then when you have things settled, do the key and the secrets stuff. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. Feel free to ask me any questions about this. I'll try to improve it over time.